Hi everybody, this is the baseball like the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, the people's champion. Your host, hi, welcome back to baseball. I hope you like this video and hit that subscribe button. So we're just sort of getting beginnings of the Major League Baseball offseason. And just going to give you some new rumors here in this video and some nuggets and different things. And one of the things that's been discussed is obviously Juan Soto. We'll talk about that. Plenty of videos on that we'll have this offseason. And Pete Alonso. And, of course, there's a new rumor about Willie Adames. Now, we got another rumor for you. And that is Corbin Burnes. So the Mets have been sort of, talking to Corbin Burnes. I mean, the Mets president of baseball operations. He worked in Milwaukee all those years. He developed Burnes as a pitcher. And apparently the Mets are talking to him. Now, one of the things that some of the reports, it seems that a lot of the Major League Baseball executives are not too sure what the Mets are doing. And that because of Stearns being very conservative in how he ran the Brewers, a lot of sort of question marks are happening amongst other executives. One of which, and the main thing is that they don't think that he's going to spend a lot of money on Pete Alonso, and he's not going to spend a lot of money on Juan Soto, just based off of his history. Now, he did a great job this past year, got the Mets to 2 games from the World Series. But there's a lot of talk that instead of like putting money into one basket with Juan Soto and a lot of money to Pete Alonso, the Mets will spend money in other places. And I think that's why that story came out about Willie Adames. But I've also heard Christian Walker, which I've talked about long before anybody else has. I was talking about Christian Walker coming to the Mets during the season. Now, he actually had a better year than Pete did, and he missed about 6 weeks with I guess, a lat injury or something. So he actually had a better year than Pete. He's actually had very good seasons the last 3 years. His trajectory as a player seems to be going up, while Pete's trajectory as a player is kind of flatlining. And he's older too, by the way. He's 33 years old. So you have players that are sort of coming into their own and taking a step back, and all this stuff is going on. And there's also talk, and there's not a lot of talk of it, this is amongst MLB executives, that the Mets would be more willing to sort of sign Walker or sign Alex Bregman to play third base for the Mets and putting Mark Vientos at first. Now, I would mention about Christian Walker. He's been a Gold Glove winner at first. So he's probably one of the best defensive first basemen in baseball. So the Mets, that's why I've said for a long time that I see that move happening more likely for the Mets than, say, this thing with Adames. Now, Adames popped up all of a sudden. We hadn't heard much, we didn't hear anything about him. But this story popped up over the last couple of days with the Mets. I'd be very surprised if that would happen. But the thing with Christian Walker, I thought that was a pretty good move and seemed to be consistent with what David Stearns wants to do, is have good defense. And we saw the good defense this past year, how good the Mets defense was and how good it got during the season. It got much better during the season. Now, Corbin Burnes. Going through some of his numbers are declining. In particular, the strikeout totals. Now, at the same time, if you have good defense, which the Mets had last year, it's not going to make much of a difference. If he's getting outs, he's getting outs. Whether it's do a strikeout or do contact, he's still getting outs. And obviously, the Mets have one of the best shortstops in the National League, one of the best shortstops in baseball defensively. The Mets had very good defense at second most of the year. Defense at first was pretty strong with Pete Alonso, and their outfield was pretty good. So to me, that's not a big deal. But would mention that the strikeout totals have declined with Corbin Burnes. Obviously, he won the National Cy Young Award back in 2021, I believe, with the Brewers. This past year, he pitched really well for the Baltimore Orioles. He pitched like an ace. And he's an ace. I mean, he's an ace starter. Now, is David Stearns going to sign him to a A 6-year deal? I don't know. He does not like giving out big contracts, and he said the other day that he has no problem giving out contracts to pitchers like he did the last offseason. So that is something, to me, that's very interesting. That he even brought that up and mentioned it when the media was talking to him. And that says a lot to me about his mindset, that he doesn't want to be hamstrung with his pitching in particular. Now, the Mets have a lot of holes here. Even though they won the wild card, they were 2 games from the World Series, 2 wins from the World Series. They have a lot of holes here. They have major holes to the pitching staff, major holes to the starting staff in particular. 3/5 of the starting rotation is not here. They're free agents. Kodai Senga did not pitch at all this past year. David Peterson only pitched really half a year. And the 3 guys that are free agents are veteran pitchers. And that's one need the Mets have. Also, the Mets have a need at first base. What's going to happen with Pete? Are they going to sign Walker? Or are they going to sign Adams, put Vientos at first? And, of course, they have a need in center field. And they have probably a need in right field, too. So the Mets have major holes on this team that need to be filled between now and next spring training, which is in a few months. Spring training will be here before you know it. So the Mets have a lot of work to do. I think we all know that. They have a lot of sort of holes to fill. So which route should you go? Should you go the big route? Or should you go a smaller route, but you want to win a World Series and you need elite players to win a World Series? Mets need elite players to win this thing. And the thing about elite players is that they rise to the occasion. We saw Juan Soto, he rises to the occasion. Pete Alonso, this past postseason, had one of the biggest home runs in the history of baseball when he hit that game-winning home run in the 9th inning. It's the first time that ever happened postseason. That's 120 years of postseason baseball. When Pete hit that home run in Milwaukee against the Brewers, against one of the best closers in the game. So you have to sort of balance it out. If you bring in players like Christian Walker. So say the Mets do this: they bring in Christian Walker, and they bring in a guy, say, just for instance, a Tyler O'Neill. I'm just throwing it out there. To play right field. And you go with a young player in center field like Drew Gilbert. How is that going to be looked at? It's not going to be looked at really well. Especially since they were so close to the World Series this past year. But, I wanted to just sort of talk about Corbin Burnes and how important, obviously, pitching is. And the Mets need a lot of pitching here. The bullpen will work itself out over next year. That's not a big deal, but you need good starters that are going to be able to go deep. And the one thing that we saw that when the Mets were really, really at their full power, if you will, at their full strength this past year, is when the pitchers were going 6-7 innings. When the Mets starters were doing that, the Mets were winning. That's why, the series against the Dodgers was such a struggle, because they weren't able to go deep into the games. If they were able to do that, the Mets would have won that series. That was the thing that hurt them the most, was that they weren't able to hold down that Dodger offense. Well, there's a lot of stuff to digest in this video. Mets had the best owner in baseball. They had one of the best executives in baseball. They had one of the best young managers in baseball. They had one of the best players in baseball, and Francisco Lindor. I'm so happy he played great this past year. And they have a very good group of young players that are here and that have a chance to bring in more young players from the farm system. But we have to sort of understand this team needs help. Needs a lot of work. A lot of work needs to be done. Again, don't have a first baseman. Don't have a center fielder. Don't really have a right fielder. And you have 3 holes in the starting rotation, and you need help with the bullpen. And I haven't even gone into the bench, which is one of the last things to worry about. Hopefully we'll have a very active offseason. I think we will. We're going to have a big offseason. Absolutely. And I want to thank you for coming by. Of course, if you send me any super thanks, I will acknowledge you in a future video. And super thanks is this little dollar sign inside of a heart. You press that. It's they'll give you a whole bunch of choices of donations you can give the channel. It's a great way to support the channel. It really is. It's a great way to support the channel. And it helps improve my attitude. No, I mean, it's just a great way to support the channel, really. I don't do too many live streams, so it's a great way to send me a little extra cash. And I got a super chat the other day, and it was great. I mean, super thanks, and that was great. And thank you for the person that sent that to me. And, of course, this is the Best Mets podcast on the internet, the Best Mets channel on YouTube. And everything's authentic here. I'm not bought and paid for by corporations. I'm not in league with the gambling rackets. An independent person. I'm the most knowledgeable Met fan on this platform. There's nobody that knows more than I do. Nobody. And I'm the most entertaining and the funniest. I got a lot of different ideas for this offseason. So, thank you for watching this video. Please, again, subscribe to the Baseball Hut. And I'll see you later.